and welcome to another installment of the Fragments Silicon reviews. 3 reviews up this week, the first of which is Anodyne 2, Return to Dust, or Return to Dust. Let's see. Well, first of all, we did an interview about this game several months ago. What was it, February? I know it's been quite a while since we did that interview, and in the intervening time, this game got released. Where to start with this one? Where to start? I mean, because, well, how do I put this? Well, quite frankly, Anodyne 2 is the weirdest game I've played all year. Not necessarily the best or the worst, but definitely the most surreal. Now, this is a game that is going to mind-bang your expectations, among other things. I'm like, Twilight's laughing because he knows it's true. Like, you'll see it, it's like in the footage, and if you remember our interview and such. But
that's also one of the reasons I like it. It's weird.
Well, it's one of the reasons why I was attracted to the game in the first place, because it's doing something different. It's doing something that no other game is doing. I can say that in complete confidence. Even the first Anodyne game wasn't doing what Anodyne 2 here it is doing. At least it did about a half of that. And that is to say, if you missed the first Anodyne game, that was a bit of a bizarre tribute to Link's Awakening. Like, I know of all Zelda games, that one, but it did that. It was a 2D top-down adventure, and it had things like it has the pixel count of a Game Boy game, or like the aspect ratio of the Game Boy screen, and there's some of that here too. But Anodyne was probably most renowned for having a very odd post game. Think in the likes of Braid, and I'm trying to remember the one that comes to mind. Well, it's like it did a lot of weird things in its post game. It was exploring a lot of weird ideas, and Anodyne 2 continues that legacy. As it notes in the beginning screen, Anodyne 2 is not a direct sequel, or at least it purports not to be. How truthful that is up to debate, let's say. I'm imagining that there's a lot of debate over this game from those who played it because, well, it's a very none of this is a very abstract game, but it's like, without delving into spoilers, let's say there are more hooks in between Anodyne 1 and Anodyne 2 than the disclaimer would have you believe. But that, the focus for that disclaimer is more about the themes of Anodyne 2 more than the characters. That seems to be what they're going for here. And what the plot of Anodyne 2 here is about, at least ostensibly about, is you play as the nano cleaner, Nova, denizen of a place called New Thailand, and agent of the Center, and you are tasked with ridding the populace, at least certain members of the populace, with this infectious material just called the dust. the nano part comes from the fact that you can, in order to cleanse a being of dust, you literally have to get in their heads.
Mm-hmm.
As it, and you do this by firing this weird spark at them. Once you've established a connection, and then it gets into kind of not a rhythm game, but it's like it's a mini game where you have to deflect these beams, and you push in the direction. It's a harmless mini game thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what Anodyne 2 here is doing, in the vein of Anodyne, is the head sections. Those are in the those are in the style of a retro 16-bit game, like much like the first Anodyne was. Although it's got a better interface, in the sense that the first Anodyne, it had the weird aspect ratio, but it also had like a lot of black space. In this game, it's the space around the 2D sections are you've got your HUD basically. You've got your energy listed here, like and it's kind of laid out like a PDA. You've got what they call the glandulox seed. I think that's how you pronounce that.
I assume so.
It's this seed that is implanted in you before you're born, and what it does is it supplies all the vital nutrients and minerals a being needs to survive, and it also allows for telepathic communication with the denizens of the center. And those may or may not be plot points. Now the big thing that separates Anodyne 2 from its predecessor is, well, what you've been seeing on screen the whole time. The overworld sections, those are done in 3D, and they're done in their own retro style. This game is aping like a PlayStation 1 game or a PlayStation 2 game. Really early 3D works to the best of its ability. Like, it doesn't quite pull off the retro aesthetic, if only because the game doesn't make me want to gouge my eyes out. Early 3D games have aged horribly. Like, they look like a fucking mess, and I don't want to look at them very often these days. Whether it be the ice-searing jaggies of the PlayStation 1 or the massive Vaseline filter of the N64. Honestly, this game comes across more as a dream. Like, if it reminds me of anything, it's like a Dreamcast game that time forgot. Because, like, it's like I place the overall graphical, not fidelity, but like the polygon constructs and such, around like Dreamcast or early PlayStation 2. But you also get a lot of modern flourishes. Like there's no way a system from 20 years ago could have run a game like Anodyne.
No.
I mean, that's kind of the difficulties with retro games, I suppose. I mean, there are some that try to get as close as possible, but in this case, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with them not 100% recreating the ugly polygon era. I know that era has its fans inexplicably. They find it charming. I'm like, no, I just find it ugly. Like, it's an era that looks ugly, has aged poorly, and, was all sorts of clunky. And that's another way that this game separates itself from, actual games from the PlayStation 1 era and such. The game plays really well. Both both the 2D sections and the 3D sections, which is surprising. Because, well, 3D isn't really a realm that you see explored a lot with indie developers. But granted, Anodyne 2 isn't, the developers of this game didn't jump from Anodyne 1 to Anodyne 2. They've been building up to it. In fact, this game is considered to be like the culmination of their past 4 or so games. And like one of their previous games was like a trying to think, it was like a simulator or an exploration game. I don't remember offhand, but it's definitely the direct forerunner to the 3D side of this game. And granted, you don't do a lot in the 3D sections. But you do things like a good deal of platforming, and the platforming is handled about as well as a B tier platformer from back in the day would have done. Now, that is to say, there's some platforming challenges, but the platforming isn't really the end challenge here. It's more rarish in its approach, in that jumping to an item is more the challenge than the actual jumping. You get a healthy double jump, as well as you can float down.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you'll be using both to get to far and away places, and beyond. More on that later. As far as the 2D sections, they play more puzzle oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wouldn't say combat is ever the focus. You do have to kill enemies, but really the what you're going to be doing from room to room is like figuring out how to get to the next room.
Yeah.
Like whether that be dealing with like blocks or killing enemies, what have you, finding a key. Like that's your basic pattern for the 2D sections, and at the end of each section, you may or may not face a boss. Like it's like not every brain encounter has an like some of them, especially in the early game, you have to fight like a nanodust agent.
Mm-hmm.
Who is hell-bent on destroying everything that destroying not only you but everything that you stand for. And honestly, I felt like this was probably among the greater weaknesses of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something we'll discuss a bit later.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's a lot to this game. Like, because like the focus here isn't really on gameplay as such. I mean, it's nowhere near say walking simulator levels of basicness or whatever. But this is definitely an interactive narrative game.
Mm-hmm.
But narrative may not be the right word to use here, because this game isn't all that narrative focused. There's definitely a narrative there, but the narrative that this game is most concerned about is character. Like, this game is all about its characters. From Nova herself to her guardian protectors, let's say, to the center, to like most importantly, all of the townsfolk she encounters. You
Yeah.
know, your basic dust mission is to find a dust infected personage and get to know them, get to know their problem. Like one of the first people you meet, they all have really weird names that I can't remember right now, but like is this like lizard monster who um has to taste everything. Uh, it's like and um has rubbed themselves red raw because of taste, and
Yeah.
your job is to get rid of the dust crystal that's been implanted in their brain, so that their sense of taste returns to a normal level. So they'll stop scratching themselves. That's just one example here. Like, but that's the I'd say that's the basic template for it's like and when you get to a dust crystal, you will turn it into a card. You will get you are looking for 4 cards in order to expand the capacity of dust that the center can hold, and you are gathering dust so that the center can institute a thing called, well, the Anodyne. What the Anodyne is, that's a little bit beyond what we can talk about in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's getting into, well, late game spoilers, among other things. But, it's like that pattern will continue for a bit of time, and then a rather unfortunate series of events, let's say, happens,
Mm-hmm.
and then not only does the world literally expand, that's another purpose of getting the dust. It'll end the dust storms that are currently preventing you from entering other areas. Like when you first start out, you're just confined to the city, and then your next step over is to explore the outskirts of the city, and so on and so forth. Like, and let me see. Jeez, like I said, there's a lot to talk about, but there's a lot I can't talk about because it just goes into spoiler territory.
Mm-hmm.
And this game is too new for me to throw up like spoilers section. Because I know at least one person from our regular audience was interested in this game, so I I can't, I don't feel in good conscience talking about, maybe the finer details of what goes on, because, like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on, and also in the tradition of Anodyne 1, there are a lot of off kilter places. This game is very big on out of bounds exploration. In fact, like early on, there is a tower um, that is specifically designed to teach you that some walls you can jump up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, they call it a glitch, but it's not actually a glitch. Like, or if it was a glitch, it's something that's been incorporated into the game. And once again, that's an Anodyne tradition because that is something that made its way into the first game. It's like in order to get like the very last secret of Anodyne 1, you had to master a certain glitch. And like I said, that was the thing that started out as a legit glitch, like
Mm-hmm.
this spacewalking thing. It's like if you move left and right, you can kind of shuffle off screen, and this was used to get a very hard to reach secret, and this game has that as well. I haven't I think I might have found one of them, but I kind of went back before I explored everywhere, and I was kind of running pressed for time. You know, but suffice it to say, even if you get, let's say, all of the endings, you're not done because this game has post game content. Um, it's got it. The post game content I can talk about is a thing called the metacoins. I know they call that post game content, but that unlocks about once you're ready to go into the outskirts. You get the metacoin unlocks, and most of them, you know, most of them are not useless, but pretty underpriced. I didn't bother to go back to get the last one, so, but I know like the metacoins are less important than, like the cards were in. It's more there is no 100% reward. At least you're told that. And from what I understand, it is true. Like there's no great there's no great secret ending. There's no there's no nothing for getting 100%. Like the highest reward you can get with the metacoins is the 500 metacoin achievements. Once again, this is just what I've found out. I managed to get the, I think, best ending. Definitely seemed to be the best. It was definitely the good ending. But I certainly did not have time enough to, really explore the post-game content. This game will keep you occupied.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Like how much time it take you? That's a bit dependent. One weird quirk about Anodyne 2 is you can get the best ending before you can get the regular ending. Like, that's all I can really talk about in those terms, but, it is something to be aware of. Because that is a thing that definitely cut down on my playtime. Like, I think I managed to skip about 6 cards. Because I can't mention the way to get the normal ending is to get all the cards, to get enough dust so that the center can institute the Anodyne. That is the basics there. Beyond that, yeah, you'll have to play on your own to find out. Let's see. The music is rather interesting. Leans really heavily into synthesizer material, but it's not a new age retro type of deal. Like this isn't synth music that is meant to invoke the 1980s. It's meant to invoke, PlayStation era music. It's it's all really nice and memorable. Definitely one of the better soundtracks I've listened to this year. Like, and let me see. I'll move over to price because, like I said, there's a lot more I would like to talk about this game, but I really can't. This is a review of Anodyne 2. This is not a long form essay about Anodyne 2. That is to say, there's a lot of themes. There's a lot of stuff that's open to interpretation. But I can't really go into that without going into spoilers. And admittedly, some of my playthrough was rushed, so I wasn't necessarily you know, uh, absorbing everything. And hell, there's one section that I can only barely bring up here because it's so different from anything else, and may throw a wrench into everything that you've seen in this game and what this game is about.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, can't talk about that. We might do a topic of discussion on this like 6 months from now or something, because I do want to. It's like I want to talk about this game, but I'm constrained by spoilers. And like I said, this game is too fresh for me to really claw at the themes and claw, what might be going on with Nova's character arc, let's say, for example, and what the center is doing. Like I said, there's just a lot of stuff here. But let's see, pricing. This game will clock in at $19.99, which is more than a fair price for Anodyne 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as far as bundles and DLC, there is an Anodyne franchise bundle, which is clocking in at $26.98. That's probably the thing you want to buy down. The Anodyne 2 OST, that's clocking in at $9.99, and there's no bundle option here. You do have to purchase that separately, and there's another step here because it's recently been announced that the Anodyne 2 OST is set to get a physical release. And to clarify, this is this is the OST of release. There is also a physical edition on the way. Let me see here. It's arriving via the Yeti. Like, I think that's how that's pronounced, because it's Yetee.
Yeah, I think that's how it's supposed to be pronounced.
The physical edition will come with a 24-page manual, a clear orange game disc etched onto a Steam key. The one of the creators of the game, it really likes old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because going back to the OST, I want to say that it looks like this one is a CD, but the OST for Anodyne 1, that was actually granted a physical release on cassette.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's one of those deals. And that's kind of going niche of a niche retro, because I know there's actually been quite a few soundtracks released on vinyl. What you don't get is a lot of people releasing stuff on cassette, because cassette was kind of the shit format of the 1980s and 90s. That's the stuff that would wear out really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to like records and CDs. At least this is what I've been remembered / told. I don't know. It's like, my formative years were with the CD. So anyway, getting back to the physical rewards, there's a T-shirt of Nova's 3 forms. Can't really elaborate on that either, because once again, that's going into late game territory. And a pin of Nova. Let's see if there's a price for the... I'm not really seeing a price for the... let me see if it's on the actual page here. Continue to external site. Sorry about this. Yeah, the Anodyne 2 Collector's Edition is retailing for $45. The original soundtrack is clocking in at $10. If you want the T-shirt, it's $20, and the pin is $10. So that all of that for a $45 value, that's pretty good for. And I'm assuming that this is going to be a limited run print because it's got the words Collector's Edition. And also, this is an indie game, not a AAA retail release that just throws out Collector's Edition. But they actually print a lot of those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, if as far as if Anodyne 2 is worth $45, with all of that, with the amount of stuff you get and the game itself, I could say going $45 for a physical edition is understandable. But if you just want the game, obviously just buy the Steam release.
Mm-hmm.
But so final thoughts at this juncture. Is Anodyne 2 worth purchasing? Very much yes.
Mm-hmm.
What do I think of Anodyne 2 as a game? As a game itself, it's a pretty solid affair. Gameplay mechanics are all all work in tandem and such. It's and it's got a lot of unique flourishes, both in its art style and music direction and all that stuff. From a mechanical perspective, this is a solid, if probably not, probably on the 6, I'd give it, just in terms of what the game is accomplishing from pure gameplay. What really pushes this up to Game of the Year contender is what it's doing with its characters and its setting and just all of the weirdness. And it's not just weirdness for weirdness sake. It's all there because it's building a very surreal world. And that's kind of one of the questions surrounding New Thailand. Is this all a dream? After all, that was one of the premises of Link's Awakening, now wasn't it? Now, as to that answer, it's complicated. And, see, that's kind of the stuff I want to talk about, but can't. So, maybe we'll revisit this this year. Maybe we'll revisit it next year. I couldn't tell you. I do want to revisit this game at some point, though. To give a more exploration of themes sort of essay rather than, a straight review. But until that time, we shall conclude this proceeding. All right. So with that out of the way, coming up next, Golix will be reviewing the Nintendo Switch version of Super Wii D-Make. Assuming he's returned, he had to go do something, like turn off a sprinkler. If we come back and he's still not here, then we'll move to the Damsel review. But until such time, hopefully he'll come back.